Hi, I'm your host Dave Kemp, and this is Future Ear Radio. Each episode, we're breaking down one new thing, one cool new finding that's happening in the world of hearables, the world of voice technology. How are these worlds starting to intersect? How are these worlds starting to collide? What cool things are going to come from this intersection of technology? Without further ado, let's get on with the show. All right, so we're joined here today by Brielle Nickoloff. Brielle, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Hey, Dave, thanks for having me on. So I am a lead of product marketing at Witlingo. We are a Washington, D.C. based startup, and our goal is to make it possible for anybody, organizations, companies, or individuals to super easily build out a presence on the voice web. So whether that is managing a community, a community's events, or if you have a brand that you would like anybody to be able to access through the voice channel, in addition to all the other digital channels like YouTube, Twitter, our goal is to make it so anyone who's anyone who's non-technical can launch it and manage it really easily.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, for those of you that have listened to my flash briefing before, Future Ear Radio, I use Witlingo. So I use their tools to create my flash briefing. Basically, you take the MP3 file, you drop it into their platform, and then they'll disseminate it for you onto, Google Assistant, onto Alexa. So it's a really awesome tool, and that's largely why I brought Brielle on today. Is I've been tuned into Witlingo and what they're doing, and I think that with any new technology paradigm, whether it be when mobile really emerged, and then now with voice computing, one of the big things initially that is so necessary in order to really jumpstart the whole ecosystem and get things going are the tool sets and the platforms for the publishers, making it super easy to create all the different experiences. And so Witlingo is really the epitome of one of these different tool sets and platforms that help publishers to create these things. And just like she mentioned, for me, I don't have any experience coding, so I don't have a background in that. But even still, a non-technical person like myself is able to, kind of use these tools, and they're very, very straightforward. So, Brielle, wanted to start there, because I saw you speak at the Voice Summit in July. You gave an awesome talk about this whole concept, but why don't we talk a little bit about that talk and the gist of it, which was sort of like this idea of democratizing the production side of voice experiences.
Sure. So when you think about how we've all been consuming content through the internet and the connected web, you have this interface, right, that anybody can read content on, or now look at pictures or videos. And so when it became possible for anybody to start contributing to the web super easily, that's sort of when its power was fully unlocked. So if you think about these different platforms now that we're accessing voice first content on, the true power of the voice web, we at Witlingo believe will be unlocked once anybody can, super easily contribute that native voice content to it. So, and that is, it's different than native web content, right? Because when you're consuming something visually, it's not automatically easily consumable through audio content. So there of course are going to be ways that we can take content from the digital web and make it consumable through the voice channel, but the way that we're sort of approaching it at Witlingo is such that we want content that was originally created and originally fit for that voice frame and make it so anybody can A, create it, and then B, manage it, and then their end users or their audience will be easily able to conversationally surf through it and consume it.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And, I remember at your talk, one of the points that you made was like this progression that we've had with mobile computing where, you look at the beginning phases of it and, the content creation side of that is so prominent and prevalent today, this meme culture that we live in where, you go on any of the social platforms and you can see that there's just like this level of proficiency amongst the user base of using Photoshop or using just different apps and tools to create memes or create GIFs. And then you also have a lot of the inherent technology that's enabled things like Snapchatting, or Instagram stories, because you have the camera that's pre-built in and the apps make it just super, super easy, all the way to the point to where, my grandmother who's 83 can use Facebook, right? Like she can go on there, she can post an update on there. If she's using it through her phone, she could even post a picture. If she's savvy, she could put up a video, so it's like these, what had previously been barriers of entry from a production standpoint, prior to mobile, thinking about, putting up social updates, with images and video, it wasn't all that conducive because the inherent technology wasn't really there because you're using like a desktop computer, whereas today you're using a mobile computer and you're using a smartphone. But the tools over time have made it so easy, and the platforms have made it so easy that truly anyone can share this type of information. And I think that's sort of like the beginnings of where we are with voices. Like companies like yours are helping to make it as easy as possible for anyone to put their voice experience out there. And I just think that's a pretty profound thing, because it takes me back to the Alexa conference from 2 years ago when the first time I heard Brian Romilly speak, and he was talking about this like really strong need to bring the creatives in. He kept talking about, we need to bring the creatives into this space. You can't just have it be full of all of the technical people that are obviously so necessary in the beginning to build this thing, but you need to also make it conducive to where the creatives can come in, so that you have that whole thinking and just contribution, into the space.
Exactly. And as you mentioned, all this text-based content and visual content that became so incredibly easy to create once everybody had a smartphone in their pocket. It can be likened now to, I mean, a smartphone also has a microphone on it. So that kind of hardware infrastructure had to also be in place for this ability now for anybody to create native voice content. And now, especially with the rise of hearables, we'll also have not only a microphone available anywhere, but also a speaker in your ear available. So that is also going to be very, very fascinating to follow as voice first goes completely mobile. And as you mentioned as well, when the creatives are involved, the intersection of this new technological paradigm with all of these different spaces and industries is really what is going to push the envelope forward, right? I mean, as you know, in the voice community, in the early days of Alexa being released, all of these developers that were creating skills and actions on Google, we were all kind of creating experiences centered around voice, right? Like we were in the voice world also talking about voice. And that's great to kind of swap ideas and build that community. But once people from other sectors started to get involved, like Daniel Hill, he brought Instagram to his flash briefing theme, and anybody who, healthcare and all of these different spaces where somebody brought a passion of theirs that had nothing to do with voice and applied it to the voice channel. That's where these really incredible applications started to pop up, and these really valuable experiences that had nothing to do with voice, because that's, voice is just another way to be consuming information and creating new information.
Yeah, totally. I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's a new way to consume information, right? And I think that this gets lost sometimes, where people think that it's an and or equation, and that this is going to supplant and just replace um, the old paradigms. And I don't really think that's the case. I think that it just complements them. And
Mhm.
you mentioned like hearables. This idea that you'll have the voice assistant on your person in your ear for longer periods of time. That opens up entirely new context that just a stationary smart speaker doesn't. I think multimodal is in the same vein, where adding a screen creates a whole new element, for the smart speaker experience. And so I think that, like, the point being is that there are so many different types of voice experiences that you can have and you can design. And as this community becomes larger and larger and more diverse, I think we're going to see more creative ways in which people are using voice as a new layer for what they're already doing, to help drive a lot of the legacy things that they were already doing. So I guess, as we move to Witlingo in particular, I'm curious, like, what is 2020 going to look like for you all, and where is the focus for you guys right now?
Right. So we have seen a lot of traction with building communities around a voice experience. So you can imagine a community like an assisted living home or a retirement community, or even like an HOA or a college dorm. Again, so a lot of these types of communities already have ways to come together online, like a Facebook group or an app. And when you think about the possibilities, well, first off, a lot of college kids now are coming to school with smart speakers to have in their dorm. Um, of course, plenty and plenty of households have a speaker in their kitchen or living room. So all of these spaces are really conducive to sort of creating another channel, like you said, not replacing the old ones necessarily, but just another way to access information and swap information through a pure voice first channel. So we've been working with a lot of assisted living communities to kind of roll out different ways to get information about different events going on in the community, and that demographic is a great candidate, because they may not be as mobile as others. When we would kind of go out and do field research with them, we found that sometimes the residents wouldn't hear about the events going on, because usually the program manager would print out different flyers and kind of post them around billboards, or like cork boards that were downstairs. So they would have to go down, or they would have to sort of rely on maybe word of mouth, hearing it from a friend. And so now that a lot of them do have the smart speakers in their apartment, the ability to not have to read really small type on a poster, and B, not have to go check out the cork board downstairs, they can just access that info from their apartment. And then we've seen an increase in engagement and in attendance once the residents did have access to the information that they could just hear. And again, it's really important to think about the end user's experience, because when you're scanning information visually, you can kind of sort through it really easily, and you don't have to look at everything all at once. But when it comes to voice, the conversational flow is so crucial in order to get all that across. So So we're really working hard on making it so you can say, oh, what's going on next week or what's going on today, and making it so that flow of information as a response is, you know, A, relevant to who's asking, and B, um, provided in a way that is super easily consumable. Because again, if you go to, lots of book clubs, then we may want to surface that event more than the other events you don't usually go to. So that's a matter of relevance, and then making it so you're not listening to like 15 options for the evening is also really important.
Yeah. No, I think that's it's so interesting because, I'm thinking back right now to that webinar that you and I did with a few others not long ago, where we talked a lot about flash briefings. And, I think that I back then, a few months ago when we were talking about this, for me, one of the things that I've thought for a long time with flash briefings, but just like in general, is this one to many format where you're communicating a message and it's accessible by many, and then you add on the next layer, which is like the customability of creating like your own personal RSS feed of these voice clippings. And I think that's where you're getting into with this idea of like community managers, particularly like in a retirement living facility, makes so much sense to me because, you think of it as like this person, they get in this habit every day to have them read their own personalized news to them. Like that's where I see, like, initially I thought it was just like with flash briefings, but I think it more applies to just like the nature of smart speakers and this ability to retrieve personalized news on your behalf. So like I'm envisioning for this person, I'm living in this retirement facility and I have a flash briefing that consists of 20 different stories that are, relevant specifically to me. So I get 10 that are of the likes of CNN, Fox News, BBC, real high level generic news that's applicable to lots and lots of people. And then you sort of think of it as like an inverted pyramid where you go then down to the next level. And, maybe I'm a big passionate St. Louis sports fan. So I'm going to get some information that pertains to the Cardinals and the Blues and maybe the Kansas Jayhawks, my lovely college basketball team. And then it goes down one more layer from there, and you have my own personal news. So I'm getting news that is like, here's what's happening in the building today. And I think like that is so interesting to me because it is such a new and effective way to communicate things that are really highly personalized. And so I can imagine where in the not too distant future, you have residents, among all these different communities, and they're all listening to, call it a flash briefing, call it some type of automated news feed that's delivered through your smart speaker that's personalized to you. So they're all getting their own different news feeds, but contained in there is the one commonality is that they all have that particular skill or flash briefing in there so that they're all retrieving that same piece of news so that they have an idea as to what's going on that day. And you can imagine that like you take this and you build that out so that you'd have these for anything. Like I used the example back then about family news, right? It might make sense for me if I had family members living all across the country. A really good way to communicate and stay in touch is like, I look at it as like, rather than sending an email chain, you would have it so that you're sending out a voice email, if you will, so that everybody can kind of get up to date on, here's what's going on in the Kemps in St. Louis. And then like the Kemps in Seattle are doing this. And, my mom's side of the family is doing this up in New York. Or, if I had family that was scattered all across the country and we're all tight knit, but we all live in different places, again, like I could see that being a portion of my own personal flash briefing or RSS feed thing. And I think that's so cool that you guys are really helping to facilitate that, because I think that is a really, really compelling use case of like tailored personalized messages that can be delivered on a one-to-many format, regardless of how big that many is, even if it's 5 people or 50 people or 1,000 people or 100,000 people. It doesn't really matter so long as that it's relevant to that particular person.
Right, exactly. And that's kind of what we're, through the years, as we began as an agency, and we've really tried to hone in on the use cases that make the most sense for voice at this point in time, from the content creation perspective and from the end user's perspective. So you're exactly right. Our product is becoming more and more versatile, but also kind of honing in on the cases that make the most sense. So, with our single Witlingo product, you can create that news feed where you have the greeting and then you have the latest info and a closing, or you can also reconfigure it to be sort of a discovery sort of experience where the resident may not know what they want to do tomorrow night, but they can say, Alexa, ask such and such community, is there anything going on tomorrow night? And then it can kind of be this guided discovery process as well, in addition to a different type of experience that is just pure news.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So as we wrap up here, Brielle, thank you for coming on and thanks for sharing this great update. I think this is such an important aspect to the whole voice first movement, is having very, very solid platforms and tool sets for the publishers, serving as sort of a cornerstone of the technology. So why don't you share where we can follow you and Witlingo kind of through the, ways in which you guys are going to continue to push the ball forward here?
Sure. You can find us on Twitter at Witlingo. That's WIT Lingo. And then we're, of course, on LinkedIn and Facebook. If you want to get more information from me directly, you can just email Brielle, BRIELLE, at witlingo.com, and we'll be happy to chat more with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Brielle, and thanks for everybody for tuning in this week. We will chat with you next time. Cheers. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Future Ear Radio. For more content like this, just head over to futureear.co, where you can read all the articles that I've been writing these past few years on the worlds of voice technology and hearables and how the two are beginning to intersect. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll chat with you next time.